Everybody, Scoutcrafter here again. Always a nice day when I can put on the flannel. Oh, I love it. I love when it's cool, and today's a damp, cool day in the upper 50s, but this is just my kind of weather. Anyway, you're probably wondering how I decide what kind of tool I'm going to do. I have a whole box of tools waiting to be done, so I pick a day and I'll go down and I'll just look around and pick one here and try and mix it up a little bit. So today we're going to be working on a nice old Billings wrench, and it's a beauty. But let's get started. I'll show you what we're talking about. Today we have this beautiful 12-inch. The actual measurement's about 12.5 inches, but it is a 12-inch wrench, and it's a Bemis and Call company. Bemis and Call. And I'll give you more about the history about this in a while. So let's just take a look at the condition that it's in. Now, you see, when they talk about forge lines, look at this one running up and down the handle here. It's really pronounced, And then over here, the rough casting over here. See that? Now, I don't know how much of this will be able to get out. And look at the nut. See, the nut is now overall this isn't in bad shape. The threads, look at the threads. I always go by the action of the wrench. It's a little stiff, but it works, and it is parallel, so it's straight parallel. It should be a nice, I mean, it's a nice wrench to begin with, but let's see what we can do with it. Now, our first step with this is pipe wrenches are notorious for having a lot of grease on them and whatnot from plumbing applications, and I've been scrubbing this down with a little, just a regular degreaser with this one I'm using here, but just spraying it down, using the wire brush, and just scraping off some of the, this is what's called patina, you know, that big scam patina. But where this is what your patina looks like anyway. It's you're getting rid of the top coat of dirt, rust, or whatever. And the only reason they're doing this is so we don't contaminate our wire brush and get that into our wire brush. So I'm gonna clean these up, and then we'll go to the wire brush. Okay, here we are at our post-wire brush evaluation. You can see it came out really nice. You can see here the lettering. I got all the rust out of here. Everything is the threads are all nice. Again, it'll look much better when it's polished out. But here's where we take it to the belt sander, and the reason is, you see here they started a grind on here. You see that? At the factory, they went, and they threw it into the bin because time is money. But here's where we take it to where the designer of this wrench actually envisioned it. The designer did not want forge marks running up or casting marks. You can see the grind. They tried to, but this is not what the designer had in mind, but time is money. So I don't take it away from the company. I just, that's why we do what we do here, is we try and take it to what the designer would have liked. And you can see here how the nut came out. Again, you have to use that Dremel if you really want the wrench to operate smoothly. You got to get in all them areas and get all that rust out, and so the lubrication. But we'll work on this forging. That's a rough sand cast forging, and that's not pretty. So let's see what we can do with it, and let's get to first we're going to go to the file and then to the belt sander. Now, I could have done this on the belt sander, but there's nothing like working with a file to make you feel like one with the tool. Here's just a look at what it looks like after filing before we go to the belt sander. You see we took off that whole lip, that annoying lip that went around the whole thing, and look how nice that is. That's just the way the designer wanted it. And same with here. Now, this is supposed to be that you can use if you had to and bang it, but that should be nice and curved and follow the flow. Here you can still see the seam, but the belt sander will take care of that. So let's go do it. Let's go sand it down. Now, on a special note here, I went through a couple belts, 80 grit belts here, getting off that flashing and that forging stampings. I needed a real coarse belt to get down and take that off, after the file even. Afterwards, we just did our regular buffing. My favorite part, right? Remember what it looked like before we started. And we are calling this wrench done. and boy, this was a job. I bet you there's close to 4 hours in this restoration because of all the intricate areas to get into. And you remember how a lot of these areas looked with the you know, the forge marks and the grinds and whatnot. But and you remember obviously the piece that came around. Look at the back here, how nice that came out. You know, this is exactly what the designer envisioned his wrench to look like. You know, not with all forging and casting marks and things like that. This is exactly what, a lot of times they'll take a piece of wood and they'll actually make a prototype and they use it for molding and things like that. And when you see how much work that goes into making a prototype, and then all of a sudden it comes out with all these marks and stuff, they get a little bit upset about it. But we didn't lubricate or anything, and it works smooth as can be. And let me tell you a little bit about this wrench. Now, this type wrench goes under a bunch of different names. A lot of they'll call it monkey wrench, they'll call it a pipe wrench, a railroad wrench, a wagon wrench. So if you're looking for one of these on eBay, first of all, you can find these all day long for $10 or something on eBay. And it's a shame because it's such a nice quality wrench, and it's a shame to see these things, you know, being more or less sold off as like scrap prices. But it's just a really interesting wrench. I like the knurled finger rings better, but this is I don't know why they use like almost like a nut, where you could see it has that shape to it, and that's a pretty unusual for this wrench. The early ones, invented in the early 1800s, had a lot of wooden handles. Later on, they went with the all-metal handles. Now, this here, and like I told you, this is a Bemis and Call model, and it's a 12-inch, number 90. But you can see over here, it's made by Billings. See? Now, the Billings Wrench Company, they were really big, and they bought out a lot of these smaller, like Bemis and Call and Peck and Stowe. They bought out all these companies back in the early 1900s. Billings bought out this company, which is Bemis and Call, in 1939, and that's where this wrench originates about that time. Now, two interesting things about this. Again, here's another monkey style wrench. This is an old Peck Stowe waiting to be restored, and you could see a lot of the features that they had that little area up here that you could use if you had to bang something. A lot of times you'll find these mushroomed out, because people do use them for banging and whatnot. But here's a very interesting thing. You see this thin handle here? You know what that leads to? The first thing we think of is, hey, you could slip a pipe over that, a cheetah pipe, and you can get more leverage, and a lot of people did that. However, if you notice, a lot of these that I see for sale, they're never bent. And this is because it's a later model. It's a 1939. The steels were much better, the tempering. A lot of the older ones with the wooden handles, you'll see them, they're bent all different kind of ways because the tempering, the steels weren't up to the quality that they had later on. Another interesting feature is, with these type monkey wrenches, which is the most common, you could adjust it with one hand, like this. You can't do that with this. You know, this was a two-handed operation, so that was one of the differences with this type of wrench. Now you can see here, we're not even fully open yet, and you can see the huge opening that you have and what kind of capacity you have on these old wrenches. And you can see here what we did with the jaws. We got the jaws back beautiful, and they do close parallel. And again, we didn't lubricate it yet, but it's smooth as silk because we polished out all the threads and there's no rust in there. But we will go over it with a little bit of a 50-50 mineral oil and Vaseline mix, and a little bit of 3-in-1 on the threads. You can see how nice and parallel these jaws close. Really nice wrench. Again, like I said, you could pick these up on eBay all day long for $10, and if it's something, it's a fairly easy restoration, except for all these intricate parts to try and get in. That was all rough casted in there and very difficult to get out. But I mean, just even to clean it up and oil it, just to have one, it's a nice wrench. Well, thanks very much for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the restoration. Thanks very much. This is a Billings number 90. Have a nice day. Take care. Bye-bye.